And Mr. Harper Mabee from Western Michigan was the head of the music department, and he came in to visit some former students or people who had been formerly recommended to him. So Mr. Carrick insisted that I go see Mr. Mabee, and Mr. Mabee was interested and made it possible for me to go to Western Michigan. It was already 2 weeks after school started. So I went to Western Michigan, and I studied with him and with Harper Mabee and with well, he was a partner, really, Mr. Henderson, who was a very gifted teacher, and I studied with him. He always said, there were 4 of us from Charlotte that were together there, and he always called us the Tee-Hee and Ha-Ha Club. But we had a good time. We enjoyed it. I graduated from Western Michigan then. It was just a 2-year course. It was a normal. At that time, it was Western Michigan Normal College. I had the pleasure of making it a university when I was at the Constitutional Convention.
Good.
And so it was a great place to go. I made many. I wrote the school song there. I won a contest, and it was the brown and gold, and I won that contest. So I had a lot of good memories of Western Michigan.
Now, I remember, Adelaide, and you tell me if I'm right, that you did enjoy that. You were, I think, the 3rd or one of the top in your class, and then the president told you if you wanted a job teaching, since you were a Catholic and a Democrat, you should go to Detroit. Am I correct on that?
Yes, he didn't talk about the Democrat. He talked about that I was a Catholic.
Oh.
He was a friend of the family's. We had lived in Charlotte with his mother-in-law, who was a wonderful elderly lady, and of course my father was good to her, my mother too, and he was the head man who brought students to be interviewed by the outside superintendent. So he called me in and he said, Adelaide, don't be impatient and don't worry. I'm not going to call you in when these superintendents from the little towns come, because they won't hire a Catholic teacher. He said, it isn't the thing in Michigan, and they won't do it. You used to have to milk the cow, and I forgot all the things you had to do when you went into some of these towns. You had to sing in the choir, and there was no federation of teachers at that time. You did what you were told to do. And so when Detroit came in, Mr. Fredericks was the man who came. And Mr. Fredericks, he was assistant superintendent, and he said that well, they told me, both of them told me that I was one of the 3 top people in the class, and I didn't have any problem at all. I organized an orchestra there in their kindergarten at the training school. I worked with a glee club. I did all the things that made it easy to get a job, but it was a great experience. I learned a lot. And so I went to Detroit.
Yeah.
And that was a great experience. The first school I went to was a school that was down near Hastings, the old Hastings Street. I don't really remember Hastings.
That was
ran through the Black Bottom down in that area. And I was assigned to that school, and from the day I got there, we were in the newspapers every day. It was a school where Henry Ford was dumping kids that came into the city. They were bringing them up in bus loads. They dumped them down in the lower part of the city. And those kids, the parents were all, the fathers were working at Ford's. That was the $5 a day time. And the mothers, many of them, were working in the buildings downtown washing, cleaning the stores and sweeping and doing all those things. And the kids were pretty much on their own. I put on shows with those children. I can remember one girl, they wore beautiful outfits. We had a teacher who was a great artist in that way. She made costumes for them. And they were supposed to, and she wouldn't let them wear shoes. She wouldn't let them wear shoes on the stage. And they were supposed to come in on their tiptoes, kind of scurry in on their tiptoes. They were fairies. And then they were to drop gracefully on the plate. Well, this one girl I saw coming, she was a very big girl who never should have been given a part as a fairy, but she was. And all of a sudden she dropped, and she dropped like a ton of brick on the stage, and I couldn't stop laughing. I got laughing and I couldn't stop. I was down in front directing, and my father and mother had come to see the show from Charlotte. They came to see this, and it was really a ridiculous thing. But I often remember this girl who was supposed to be so graceful and delicate, and she was like a ton of brick when she came. There were some great experiences in that school. We had one elderly teacher who went around carrying a yardstick all the time, which she used very handily. And the kid got out of line, he got the yardstick. But the first day I went there, I was assigned to a room where my home room would be. I was assigned to that room. And of course, these kids in the home room weren't all music students. They went all over the place. But then you get your classes. The home room would go out and be scattered all over the building. Then you get your music classes. Nobody told me that there was a special system with the thing. No one told me that at all. So I started teaching, and I was having a great teacher. I was teaching music. And this then a bell rang, and I paid no attention to it. I didn't know what the bell was all about, so I paid no attention. I went right on teaching. All of a sudden, somebody came in, whammed open the door, and said, "You're holding up the whole platoon system in this school." Nobody dared move until my class moved. Oh, it was a rough experience, but I was lucky. I had a good principal who was very defensive of me and very good to me. He was fine, and he told the music department people to go away and leave me alone. I was doing just fine without them. And so because one of them wanted everything in perfect style. They were supposed to sit with their hands folded. They were supposed to be on the desk, the hands were folded. They were to put, the first girl or boy was to put the books on their left shoulder. Then they were to hand them back. They were to take one. Now this is with both hands occupied. They were to take one for themselves and pass the others back. And the books were to be passed that way to the back row. So what happened to the books always was they all fell on the floor. And everybody had to stop and pick them up. But I never got over having to apologize for having held up the whole platoon system.
You want? Okay, now let's go on to when you were at Jefferson School. I remember that school. What were your experiences there?
When I was where?
At Jefferson School in Detroit.
Oh, yes. Jefferson School. Well, I taught it. Of course, I had a wonderful principal there. She was a remarkable woman. We
Sarah
were right
Robinson,
in the
wasn't that?
Miss Robinson,
Yeah.
Sarah Robinson, whom Menon appointed to the
Civil Service.
Yes, she was.
Civil Service Commission.
Yes, Civil Service, and she'd been a social worker in New York before she came, and she was the answer to prayer. She understood